I start this. We need to check our bat pins. These right here, these two little knobs on top of the wheel head, those are called your bat pins. Just check them to make sure they're not wobbly. If they're wobbly, choose a different wheel and let me know so that I can get them tightened. And then your bat, the two holes line up right with your bat pins. Then you are going to need a few tools. So over here, I have buckets. You're going to need to grab a bucket, fill it up with water. If you are expecting help from me, I appreciate warm water. So I like to fill mine with, especially in the winter when it's cold, with warm water. Just about halfway is fine. And then I grab the sponge, and then one other tool that I need is this wooden rib right here. So small sponge and then a wooden rib. As we continue, we'll need more tools, but for right now, for just centering, a sponge and a rib is plenty. Then you're going to take this back to your seat. You're going to place that up top. Just so that you guys can see, I'll probably move it to the floor, but you can set yours right at the top of your wheel. And then take your cover off your container. Usually put my clay bag on the floor, and you're ready to go. Right here, down by my right foot, is the pedal. There's another one right here. They usually will be placed up on your wheel at night because we put them up so that they can mop, but you'll take that and you'll move it down. Another thing is going to be the on and off switch. Right here by my right hand at the bottom is going to be your on and off switch, and you're going to make sure that that light is on and you're ready to go, and then you can just test it by pushing that pedal slightly. Is anyone left-handed? Lefties. Okay, if you are a left-handed person, you're going to want to be on these yellow wheels because you can switch the direction. You can make them go the opposite way. I think that's everything before we start. These are your splash pans. These around the wheels. Make sure that's on and facing you so that you can save your legs a little bit. Behind you, Kylie, will you pass me a towel? Thank you. In that laundry basket, I should have clean towels. You can just take one and you can drape it over both your legs if you prefer, or just one. This is gonna help get rid of any extra water. And then I think we're ready. So I'm gonna grab, with a dry hand, I'm gonna grab my clay. Be careful not to get your ball of clay wet before you put it on the wheel, it won't stick. And then I'm gonna make sure it's in a nice sphere before I get started. If you have something like this, so see how there's a line through my ball of clay? It's not a big deal. You don't have to spend time smoothing that out. Just don't throw it down on that crack because we could trap air in between the bat and our ball of clay. Just pick a different side that's nice and smooth and throw it down on that side. Does that make sense? Okay. Then once you've got your ball nice and rounded, you're going to take your finger and you're going to dip it in a little bit of water, 2 fingers, just like that. You're going to pat them dry just a little bit so that we're not dripping. And then you're going to take one finger, you're going to place it in the middle as it's spinning, and then the second finger a little bit further out. So you're going to kind of make this like bullseye pattern, just like that. Then I like to put a little X through it. If you have too much water on your bat, notice that that X is barely showing up. It's not too much water, it's just a little bit of dampness. If you have too much water, it's not gonna stick, it's gonna slide right off. But just a little bit of dampness, and then you're gonna take your ball of clay and smack it on. I'm gonna do that a little bit harder, like that, okay? Then, once you got your clay on there, give it a little wiggle, make sure it's not going anywhere. And then we're gonna do something called pre-centering. And pre-centering is where you're going to spin your wheel very slowly. So I'm just touching my pedal just a little bit, even slower than that. And you're just gonna turn and start to pat that ball of clay into a nice cone shape. I'm doing 2 things when I'm doing this. I'm flattening the edges and getting a better seal, and I'm also getting it ready to go into that cone shape. And and it's also going to help your clay stay on the wheel. So I'm patting down, but also at an angle. So I don't want to flatten my clay. I just want to pat in a downward motion so that I'm really getting it stuck on there. And then I'm going to go ahead and stop my wheel. I'm going to give it another wiggle, make sure it's nice and stuck. I'm going to take a wet finger and spin and just get a seal on the bottom of that clay. So now we're really not going anywhere. That's that process, getting your clay on the bat. Questions so far? Okay, now I'm ready to start centering. So in the videos that you guys watched on Friday, in that discovery that you guys worked on, the videos talked about coning and doming, and those are the two things that you're gonna do to get your clay centered. And there's a couple tricks along the way that I'll help you with as I talk through it. But those are the two basic mechanics that you're gonna be doing as you are centering your clay on the wheel. So now that I've got it stuck, and I know that no water is gonna get underneath my clay, like where the bat and the ball of clay are attached, I can go ahead and put water on my piece, because I know it won't make the bottom slippery. Does that make sense? Okay. Then I'm gonna put my hands, I'm gonna think about my posture first. Your chair. Make sure your chair is touching your wheel. The only time this has been an issue is if you are like really tall or really short. That it might feel comfortable to push your chair back a little bit if you're one of those two things, and that's okay. You can adjust your pedal, but try to make it so that your chair is touching your wheel. There's been a few times where people are more comfortable without the chair touching the wheel, but start there. Then I'm gonna keep my foot on here. I'm gonna find a speed that I like, and I can take my foot off and it's gonna continue that speed. Some people have trouble, they think that if you take your foot off, it's gonna be like a car where it'll start to slow down, but it actually stays at whatever speed you choose. So if you have trouble keeping your foot still, it helps to take your foot off once you find a speed that you like. So now that my chair is against my wheel, my legs are touching my splash pan, I'm going to think about my elbows. So my elbows are gonna dig right into my sides here, and I'm going to use my ribs to kind of brace myself and my elbows to brace myself as I'm centering. So now that we've got our posture, we're gonna think about our head. Your nose is gonna be directly over the center of your clay. You don't wanna be up here, because if I'm up here, I have no control of my arms, right? If I'm down here, I've got control. I've got my nose right over my clay, my elbows are in my ribs, I'm nice and braced, and I can go ahead and use my body to put pressure on my clay. You want to put more pressure than you probably think. If I sit here and just let my hands glide over the clay, nothing's going to happen. We want to put pressure on the clay to make it move. We got to make it do what we want it to do. So I'm nice and braced, I'm over my clay, and I'm going to start to cone up. I'm gonna stop right there. So what I'm doing, you can see the shape of my clay has changed. What I'm doing is I'm taking my hands and I'm squeezing in at the bottom to make that clay go up. Because if I'm squeezing the clay together, the clay has no choice but to go up. So notice I've got a lot of clay on my bat here. I'm gonna take my fingers and I'm gonna kind of scoop that in so that it's all a part of my cone. Stop for some more water. I want you guys to pay attention to how often I put water on my clay, because that's another important thing. And I'm just scooping that clay off the bat so that I've got it up into my cone. Then I can continue to cone up. I'm squeezing with the bottom part of my hand, and then I'm gonna move up the clay as my clay gets taller. Just like that. Some more water. And then we're ready to go back down. So to dome, I like to use my thumbs. This is the method that I prefer. If you prefer to do the karate chop method, that's fine as well. What did the Earth Nation ceramics, what did he do? Thumbs. I just think it's easier. I feel like I have more control than if I'm up here So try it with your thumbs first. If that's not working for you, you can try with a closed fist or the karate chop. I'll show both. But I'm going to start with my thumbs at the top. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pushing down, but also forward at the same time. So if you're on the side, you'll be able to see the clay kind of bend forward. You'll notice it'll bend forward towards the top front of my wheel, and that's what's gonna help my piece get centered. So I'm pushing down with my thumbs, also in a forward motion. I'm gonna stop there. Every time I stop, you need to let go slowly. If I take my clay, and my hands are on my clay, and I let go quickly, what happens? Do you notice how much more wobbly it is now? Make sure you're letting go slowly so that you're not disrupting all that work that you've done. So because I did that, I'm just gonna go back up into a cone to kind of counteract that and then show you that dome again. So my hands are on the side, my thumbs are at the top, I'm pushing forward. Do you guys see it bending forward from the side? And then as it gets into more of a dome shape, you won't see it bend forward quite as much. But I'm still aiming like if I were to push my clay right off of the front of the wheel, it would go forward like that. And I'm pushing forward and down, and I'm leaning into it. Once my body's leaning forward, and then once I feel like it's in a nice dome shape, I'm gonna slowly let go. Add some more water. Anytime you feel friction on your hands, make sure you stop and add water. So if your hands start to feel kind of sandy or it starts to feel warm, stop and add water. Now, if it starts to feel really sandy, because when you're first learning how to center, you're gonna cone and dome and cone and dome and cone and dome for like 20 minutes straight. That's all you're gonna be doing. And what will happen is that top layer of clay will start to disintegrate, and that sandy layer is gonna come, it's like gritty, it's going to come to the surface. So if you are finding that your hands are starting to get sore and it's really rough, use your wooden rib, just put it on the side here like this, and then you can kind of scrape off that sandy layer to another layer of smooth clay. So I just start at the bottom and then round it all the way. And that's gonna help get rid of that sandy layer. Another way to prevent that is to leave this clay on your hands. So you'll start to get slip on your hands as you are working, and that's gonna also protect your hands, and it'll make it so that you don't have to use quite as much water. So leave that on your hands as well. Also, if you have a lot of clay that's like spread out on your bat here, you can also use this tool, and you can kind of like scrape it off of your bat, so that can be helpful as well. Another thing, this bucket right here is going to be for any time I have clay scraps like this, I can throw them in here. If you're coning and you've got a tall cone and the top of your cone breaks off, you can throw it in there, because this will all be recycled. I'll show you guys how to use the hug machine later on, and that'll all be recycled. Questions so far? Okay, I'm gonna cone again. So, I'm braced, my legs are tight against my splash pan here. I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to start to squeeze that clay so it starts to go up. I'm using a lot of pressure on these two fingers and the bottom part of my palm. My hands are touching the bat, and we're just squeezing, and then as I get taller, I'm going to let go really quick because I need more water. It's starting to get dry. Do you guys see how it looks dry? That's when you want to add that water. I'm going to start back at the bottom again, squeeze until I get a nice cone. Water, thumbs at the top, and bend that clay forward, just gently. And then as I get closer to the dome, I need more water. Let go slowly. As I get closer to that dome, I'm gonna really lean into it. Lean forward. So now my nose is like way past my clay. But I'm using my body to steady that clay and make it still under my hands. Now, to check if you are centered, you'll probably be like, okay, I think I'm centered. I'm gonna be around, obviously. You're gonna say, Miss Lumsden, do you think I'm centered? You're gonna put your hands on it just like this, and then I'm going to watch it spin with your hands on it like this. If I don't see any movement, do you see how my hands aren't moving? If I don't see any movement, that means you are centered. If your hands are kind of going like this, that means not quite, and I'm gonna tell you to keep going. Sometimes what will happen is the top will be centered, but the bottom won't be. A couple things you can do is you can take this scraper tool. You can scrape some of that extra clay off the bottom. That can help you get the rest of it centered. But that will happen if you don't get everything into your cone. So remember how the very first time I coned, I went back down and I said I'm using these 3 fingers and I'm gonna scrape along my back to get that extra clay up into my cone. If I leave that clay on my bat, it's gonna stay uncentered and it's just gonna be there and it's not gonna do anything because I need to make it all move. So if you take your fingers and you just scrape along the bottom, scrape along the bat and get all of that clay into a nice tight dome, you should be okay. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. I think what I'll do is I'll hit this off center and show you like what it looks like when it's really uncentered and how to kind of get it back to center. Okay, that's pretty uncentered. So if you have a piece like this, first of all, starting out with a shape that's not a sphere is going to work against you. We talked a little bit about that when we were balling up our clay. So if you have a piece and your hands are going wild like this because you didn't ball it into a nice ball shape, it's just going to make you have to work harder. But if you do get to a point like this, putting your hands on your clay and just leaning into it, putting pressure on both sides, that's going to help it get back to a better spot. Does that make sense? Then you're going to cone that clay up, add some more water. I'm scraping along the bottom here to make sure all my clay is up into my cone. Just like that. And then we're ready to dome down. Sometimes what will happen, if you get too tall or if you don't use enough water when you're at this point, the top part here might break off. If that happens, please just put it in your Tupperware. Don't try to put it back on. What do you think will happen if you try to put it back on? Air will get trapped. And then if there's an air pocket in here somewhere, it's just gonna continue to wobble. You're not gonna get it to sit still or to center. Because if that air pocket's in there, it's throwing everything off and you'll just make it harder for yourself. So now I've got my hands on the side, pushing forward with my thumbs. I'm gonna let go slowly, add some water. And then I'm gonna bring it down the rest of the way. And then as I get to the bottom, lean into it. The stiller and more supported your arms are, the easier you're going to be able to get the clay to do what you want. We're not letting the clay control you. You need to make sure you're controlling the clay. So if my arms are out here, I'm not going to be able to use my muscles or my body weight to get it to do anything. If I'm hunched over here and I'm really leaning into it, honestly, I'm really not putting much pressure on it with my hands. It's really coming from this leaning forward motion, and that's going to make my clay go to center like I want it to. Questions? Okay. Once you are done, once you've got it centered, I'm gonna be checking people off for having a piece centered. So as soon as you think you got your piece centered, make sure you show me, and then I'll check your name off as you have been able to center. Once you are done, or it's time to clean up, or you're centered, if there is extra time, if you are a centering pro and you get it centered and you've still got time during class, you can go ahead, cut your piece off, put it in here, grab another piece, put it on, center again. If it's time to clean up, I just kind of scraped my hands off, put any extra clay that I had in there. I'm gonna wipe my hands. I'm ready to start cleaning. So I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna come over here. Here, go right there. I'm gonna grab a wire tool from the entanglement of wire tools. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut my piece off. To do that, you're just gonna take the sides. I like to wrap it around my finger like you're flossing your teeth. Your thumbs are gonna go against your bat. So we're going like this. Thumbs against the bat, and you're just gonna slide it under, just like that. Then you'll probably need to pass this off to someone else because someone else might need it. Then you're gonna take this, and you're gonna throw that in there. All of that clay is gonna be reused. So keep all of the clay that you throw. You're gonna recycle it. I'll teach you guys how to do that. Then you are going to take your wooden rib, start your wheel, and I just like to scrape everything off my bat because it makes cleanup easier. And then I get some extra clay. Just like that. Now I'm going to take all of the tools that I use. So I'm going to take my bat, my sponge, my wooden rib, and my bucket of water. And we're going to wash all of these. So you're going to dump out your water. If there's clay, oh, I forgot to say, there's not a lot because I haven't been working for very long, but you'll get clay in the bottom of this. So before you bring this to the sink and dump it, scoop out any clay that might be at the bottom of it, put it in there, and then go dump it in the sink. That's going to help our sink cleaners as well, and we won't waste quite as much clay. So I'm going to take my sponge, rinse that out, use my sponge to clean my wooden rib. I'm going to wash my bat. You can use your sponge to wash your bat. Your bat is always going to go back into your locker. The tools are always going to go back on the shelf. So I've got a clean bat, clean sponge, clean rib. I'm going to rinse out the bottom of my bucket. If you have a lot of clay around the rim of your bucket, wipe that down. I don't expect these to be like perfectly clean, but it helps if they're not super gunky. Then I'm going to take my bat. I'll leave this by my clay because I know I need to put that back, and then we put our tools back. Just like that. And then you're going to grab a sponge to clean the rest of your wheel. First thing, I'm going to take the black splash pan. Any clay that's in here, I'm just going to dump in my bucket. And then you're going to take this and put it in the sink, wash that. These ones here are a little bit different. They have tabs on the sides. So they've got two tabs on either side. You have to push them down at the same time. And then both of these sides come out and you wash both sides. And then to put it back, you want to wiggle one side in. And then the other side pops on just like that. Okay, so we're going to wash this. I'm just taking my sponge, wiping all the way around. This is the most fun part of the demo where you get to watch me clean everything. But it's really important because you're going to do this every single day that you're on the wheel. So every other day. side. And then I'm going to put my top on my Tupperware. I can set this down there and start to wipe down the rest of my wheel. You need to wipe down the whole top of your wheel as well as the sides of the wheel head. I always check the wheels after you're done throwing, and if they are still dirty, I make you come back and clean it again. So wipe down the entire thing. One more wipe around here. A lot of times people forget to wipe down here. So make sure you get all the way around. And then that looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to take a saucepan, put that back on. Chairs always go up. And then towels. So these won't be perfectly clean every time that you use them. We reuse them for about a week and then I have them wash them. So in order to help them dry out for the next class, you're just going to put your towel over just like this, and then put your wheel up. Be careful with these. As you are putting these up, if you want to avoid this altogether, go ahead and just turn off your wheel. But a lot of people, what happens when they pick this up, they grab it like this, and what do you think happens when they grab it like this? Yeah, the chair starts to spin, and then the chair goes flying, and the towel goes flying. Not really. But just be careful. I like to grab it by the cord on the side and then set it down on top just like that. Then I take these things, I make sure my extra pieces of clay are nice and wrapped up and tucked, and then I bring my bat back, my Tupperware back. Questions? Yes?
Should we turn the wheel off?
You can. That's probably a good idea, yeah. I usually forget, but if you think about it, yes. Other questions?
How much clay are you using today?
1.5 pound balls.
Okay.
So it's the same that we wedged up yesterday, and I use the same amount that you guys are gonna have. Other questions? It's been a year since, not a year, but since last semester, since I watched that centering video that I gave you guys. Was it pretty similar to what he did? Yeah, for the most part. Everybody, there's lots of different ways to center, but that's how I like to do it. So people have different methods. So if you find something that works better for you, great. But it's kind of the same overall idea. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left. Let's talk about table washers and sink cleaners. So you guys have all wiped down your tables a couple times by now. So you guys know how to do that. Friday we assigned specific table washers and sink cleaners. So if you're a table washer, you kind of already know the jam. You're going to fill up that bucket of water, use that scraper, scrape down the wedging boards, fill up the bucket of water with clean water, wipe down your whole table, wipe down your wedging boards. Biggest thing, dump out the water when you're done. I have noticed that I came in this morning and I had to wipe down a table myself. I noticed that these scrapers are starting to get rusty. So I think what we're gonna do is, instead of putting them in the buckets, even though that looks nicer, let's keep them out of the buckets, just on the wedging boards so they stay drier, so they don't rust as quickly. Sink cleaners. So when you guys get back to your tables, if you guys don't mind just pulling those out for me. Sink cleaners. At the end of the hour, once everybody is done washing their wheels and we are ready to go, I'm going to say, all right, sink cleaners, go ahead and wipe down your sinks. On even days, the even tables are going to be in charge of their sinks. So I'm going to say tables 2, 4, 6, and 8, go ahead and take care of your sinks. And if you're at one of those tables, you go to your sink. They're all labeled with numbers, so you can see which sink is yours. And then on odd days, I'm going to say 1, 3, 5, and 7, go ahead and take care of your sinks. What that's going to look like is you're going to come over here, you're going to grab a sponge, you're going to wipe out any clay that's in the bottom. So I'm just taking my sponge. Obviously there's not a lot of clay in here because I'm the only one who has been on the wheel today. And you're gonna take that, and there should be garbage cans. There's one over there, and oh yeah, it's right back there. You're gonna take this, and you're just going to wipe your sponge on the side of that garbage can. So all that clay that's sitting in the bottom of the sink is just going to go in the garbage. Then you're gonna take that sponge, rinse it out. Any leftover clay dust goes down the sink. If there's garbage, like people who don't know how to throw away their paper towels, collect those, throw those away. And then, please throw away your paper towels for people, for the sink cleaners. And then you're gonna wipe all the way around the sinks. You're gonna wipe the handles to the sink, the faucet itself. Everything gets dusty in this room, so just keeping up on it really helps. You're gonna wipe behind the sink, or behind the faucets, around here, and then both sides. Just make sure all of these nail brushes, these are for like if you have clay under your nails, you can wipe your nails. Just make sure those get put away, and then that's it. Then you rinse out your sponge one more time, put it back in the dish dryer. Questions at all? Okay, I think that's it then. That's all I have. So go ahead, head back to your seats. Grab those scrapers out of the bucket.